overpowers her and she is badly injured. After checking on Tifa, Cloud follows Sephiroth inside Jenova's chamber. Here we see a very strange humanoid device hooked up to the wall. Sephiroth spreads his arms in the air, gazes up at the creature he believes to be his mother, and says, "Mother, together let us take back this planet. I have a great idea. Head for the Promised Land." Cloud confronts him over the destruction of his hometown, the deaths of his friends and family, and Sephiroth merely laughs in response. He says, "Here they are again, Mother." With her superior abilities and magic, Mother was destined to be the ruler of this planet. But they, those worthless creatures, are stealing the planet from Mother. But now I'm here with you, so do not worry. Then he tears off the humanoid device, and the player is shown their first clear image of Jenova. Jenova's visual design is intended to be utterly alien, unlike anything else found on this planet. And as to her true origins, we see a creature with a human face and a vaguely humanoid body, but with blue skin, glowing eyes, and strange growths all over her flesh. Cloud then tries to confront Sephiroth with the sorrow he is spreading, but the villain just laughs again and says, "My sorrow? What do I have to be sorrowful about? I am the chosen one. I have been chosen to be the ruler of this planet. I was given life in order to take the planet from you stupid fools, to reclaim it for the Cetra. What should I be sad about?" So this is Sephiroth's goal for the rest of the story. He is going to take the planet away from the filthy and selfish humans, because he believes as the child of Jenova, whether she's a Cetra or not, he is the rightful ruler of the planet. He does not have any goal beyond this. It does not appear as if there is anything specific he actually wants to do once he's taken over the planet. He just believes that it is his right to be in charge because it was his mother's right. Not necessarily because she was a Cetra, which she wasn't, but because of her superior abilities and magic. He is revealing a belief in the hierarchy of power here. The powerful deserve to be in control, and because Sephiroth believes himself to be the most powerful being around, obviously he deserves to be in charge. So, in this scene, he's not just driven by the ostensibly noble goal of avenging the Cetra, he is also pursuing power simply for power's sake, which is a stereotypical evil villain motivation. I think Sephiroth is trying to follow in the footsteps of his mother, at least as he understands them. Sephiroth is not just basing his identity around being a descendant of the Cetra, he is specifically basing his identity around being the son of Jenova. And in this, a new theme appears. It's not just about identity. It's about the sins of our fathers, this inability to escape from the bounds of our genetic heritage. Moving forward, Cloud's flashback ends there. We don't yet discover what actually happened to Sephiroth 5 years ago, why he disappeared, why he has been dormant for so long. From here, Sephiroth becomes the focus of the entire story. Our heroes embark on a grand adventure, where they cross entire continents and oceans. This vast fantasy landscape full of danger and wonder, where they meet new friends and face off against deadly foes. Our heroes are chasing him across the entire world. At every new location, you can find rumors of a man in a black cloak who just recently passed through on his way to somewhere else. It always feels as if we are right on his heels. Sephiroth is apparently undertaking a grand adventure of his own, though his goals are not yet clear. Perhaps he is still searching for the Promised Land. For now, I want to focus on just 2 stops of this adventure, Cosmo Canyon and Nibelheim. Okay, so at Cosmo Canyon, Red 13's hometown, we meet Bugenhagen, a wise elder who reveals interesting details about Red 13's true identity, and also reveals important information concerning the inner workings of the planet. In a long expository cutscene involving a flashy 3D holographic representation of the solar system, Bugenhagen explains that in this setting, when a person dies, not only does their body decompose and return to the soil, but that a person's soul returns to the planet as well. And not just the souls of humans, but the spirits of all living things. All of these souls and spirits join together, roam, converge, divide, forming a swell, a fantastic magical current rushing within the deep bowels of the planet. This current is known as the life stream. The life stream is the source of all life on the planet. Whenever a child is born or a new seed sprouts, it is blessed with soul and energy from the life stream, and when they die, they return this gift of energy from whence it came. And it's not
Interesting.
just the source of human, plant, and animal life. It is also the source of planet life. It could be said that the life stream is the collective soul of the living planet itself. This energy is under threat by Shinra, but that's not important right now. What's relevant to Sephiroth is simply the existence of the life stream. This is a massive source of power and knowledge, which Sephiroth will try to take possession of. Next, we will travel to Nibelheim, and to Cloud's shock, the town looks as if it was never damaged at all. All evidence of Sephiroth's rampage has vanished. It is as if Cloud's story never actually happened. The townspeople don't even remember Cloud, suggesting that maybe he never actually lived here. Maybe his memories are mistaken. This is the beginning of Cloud's own identity crisis, when his own perception of himself is challenged, and eventually it will lead him to reconstruct his identity in a very similar way to what Sephiroth did. We will discuss this in far more detail in my video essay analyzing Cloud's character, but for now you just need to understand that Cloud and Sephiroth are mirrors to each other. Their characters follow similar patterns and face similar challenges. As I've discussed on this channel many times before, villains often serve as dark reflections of their respective heroes, a darker path not taken. In the dark corners of Nibelheim, our party can find these strange figures wearing black cloaks. They groan and moan and mutter to themselves about Sephiroth, mansion, and something about a reunion. Each cloaked figure has been tattooed with a number. Red 13 also carries a number tattoo, given to him during his time as Hojo's research specimen, which suggests that these cloaked figures are a result of Hojo's experiments. A lot of them also give Cloud gifts, useful items and consumables. I think these gifts are intended to suggest a connection between Cloud and the cloaked figures, but at this point in the story, the player will have no idea who or what these cloaked figures are. Cloud enters the old mansion again, goes back down into the secret research lab in the basement, and finds Sephiroth waiting there. This is actually the first time we ever see Sephiroth outside of a flashback, the first time he appears in person in the present day. He asks Cloud if he's going to participate in the reunion. Of course, Cloud has no clue what he's talking about. And then Sephiroth says, Jenova will be at the reunion. Jenova will join the reunion, becoming a calamity from the skies. Again, Cloud is totally confused. Sephiroth seems disappointed and says that Cloud does not yet have the right to participate. He then reveals his next destination and encourages Cloud to follow him, and then flies away. The most interesting thing about this encounter is that Sephiroth shows absolutely no hostility towards Cloud whatsoever. He does not treat Cloud as either an enemy or a threat. In fact, he's actually kind of friendly. This is really unusual behavior for a villain, especially one as murderous and despicable as Sephiroth. The writers do such a fantastic job of building up this mystery around Sephiroth. The first time you play, his actions simply will not make any sense to you at all. Why does his personality make these dramatic swings between violent rampage and total calm? Why is he being so friendly with Cloud, someone who should be his sworn enemy? These mysteries are a very compelling driving force in the story. It does seem from his dialogue that Sephiroth, during the 5-year gap since that flashback, learned of Jenova's true nature, that he knows now that she is not a Cetra, that she was actually born from the sky, which might explain why he's no longer hostile towards humanity. He no longer views them as traitors. They do not matter to him or his plans anymore. The Cetra don't seem to matter anymore either. From here on out, all that matters to him is Jenova, his mother, restoring her and following in her footsteps. Unfortunately, learning this truth has not healed his madness. He is still totally crazy, as we'll see later. So why not? If it was the identity crisis and the mistaken belief that he was a Cetra that caused his insanity in the first place, then shouldn't learning the truth about Jenova have cured that insanity? I think the problem is that Sephiroth still does not know the full truth, and in fact never will. But we'll discuss that more later. One last note before we leave Nibelheim. In a secret chamber in the mansion's basement, you can find Vincent, a former Turk transformed into some kind of vampire-like creature, I guess. He was in love with someone named Lucretia, a member of Shinra who apparently betrayed him. Very few details of her character are revealed in this original game, but Lucretia was Sephiroth's biological human mother, something he never learns. Anyway, moving on. The party hears a rumor that Sephiroth is searching for something called black materia, and in pursuit of this, they eventually travel to the Temple of the Ancients, a crumbling and forgotten jungle temple built by the Cetra to safeguard the black materia. Inside, a well of ancient souls shows Cloud and Aerith a vision, and in this vision we finally learn Sephiroth's new goal. He is not searching for the Promised Land anymore. He does not care about avenging the Cetra anymore. His plans have completely changed. Okay, so in this vision, Sephiroth confronts a member of the Turks inside the temple. He says he is going to do something that the fools at Shinra never even considered in their short-sighted, trivial schemes. He says, all the spirit energy of this planet, all its wisdom, all its knowledge, I will meld with it all. I will become one with it, and it will become one with me. Then he viciously stabs the Turk through the chest, declaring, only death awaits you all, but do not fear, for it is through death that a new spirit energy is born. Soon you will live again as part of me. The energy that makes up each of our characters' souls is the same energy that makes up the life stream, which is of course the exact same energy that makes up Sephiroth's soul as well. Normally, when a person dies and their soul leaves its body and returns to the life stream, their consciousness, their sense of self, their individual identity is lost. They become one with the whole, and eventually are reborn as someone or something else. But Sephiroth believes he can merge his soul with the life stream while he is still alive. Instead of having his consciousness overwritten by the neutrality of the life stream, he believes that his consciousness can overwrite the entire life stream. In essence, the life stream will become him, will think his thoughts and feel his feelings alone. By the strength of his individual will, he wants to become the soul of the planet, the source of all life. This is why Sephiroth's perception of death has changed. He honestly does not believe he is killing any of these people. He is just returning their energy to the life stream, where it will eventually become a part of his own soul. Their essence will become a part of him, and will live on inside him for all eternity. After Sephiroth explains his plan, the Turk asks, can you actually do that? And no one in the game ever answers this question. Is it actually possible for anyone to overwrite the life stream with their own consciousness? Just keep that question in mind as we go through the next scene. Okay, so Cloud and Aerith reach the room with the murals. Sephiroth is flying all over the place, laughing and ranting and muttering like a crazed psychopath, demonstrating that he is still, in fact, completely insane. Regardless, Aerith confronts him and asks, how do you intend to become one with the planet? And Sephiroth says, it's simple. Once the planet is hurt, it gathers spirit energy to heal the injury. The amount of energy depends on the size of the injury. What would happen if there was an injury that threatened the very life of the planet? Think how much energy would be gathered. And at the center of that injury will be me. All that boundless energy will be mine. By merging with all the energy of the planet, I will become a new life form, a new existence. Melding with the planet, I will cease to exist as I am now, only to be reborn as a god to rule over every soul. Okay, so this is all fine and dandy. Sephiroth will use the black materia to summon a meteor, which will strike the planet, causing a massive injury, which will cause the planet to gather a proportionally massive amount of energy. And then Sephiroth will sit in the middle of the crater, soaking up all that energy like a big fat baby in a bathtub. But remember that question, can you do that? The rest of the game is totally focused on preventing Sephiroth from using the black materia, from carrying out his plan in the first place, so his theory is never put to the test. It is possible that the Earth would not have even survived the meteor strike, in which case Sephiroth would be destroyed too. At minimum, Sephiroth's plan is incredibly risky, and the chances of success seem very uncertain. You would have to be crazy to try something like this. And Sephiroth is crazy. His mind was shattered by that identity crisis he experienced back in Nibelheim 5 years ago, and it has never properly healed. Anyway, moving on. Immediately after this scene, Cloud begins acting very strangely. He laughs and mumbles in the exact same way that Sephiroth did before, but is quickly brought back to his senses by his friends. Through a complicated series of events, our heroes manage to acquire the Black Materia, and then something completely crazy happens. Sephiroth appears and he tells Cloud to wake up. Cloud collapses on the ground, and when he stands back up, he hands the Black Materia over to Sephiroth. And then, even worse, he begins attacking Aerith. And this is what is truly horrific to me. On this channel, in the past, I have discussed villains who are able to turn someone against themselves, to cause characters to lose control of their own bodies and minds. It's one of the most terrifying abilities a villain can possess, and this is a particularly upsetting example. As blocky and blurry and low resolution as this scene is, I find it to be really unnerving. The writers have done such a good job at developing Aerith's character. She is so kind and so good and so supportive, particularly towards Cloud. For her to become the target of this violence is awful. It would be one thing if she was being attacked by Sephiroth or some monster, but to be viciously attacked by one of her closest friends, that is horrifying. This is the moment when Sephiroth becomes a truly great villain in my eyes. The stuff with his shifting identity is interesting, the scale and insanity of his ambitions are compelling, but it is in this scene, when he turns these friends against each other, that he becomes truly dangerous and frightening. Okay, so what is happening here? How is Sephiroth able to do this? Why is Cloud obeying his commands? I used to think his ability to control Cloud had something to do with Jenova. As we'll learn later, both of their bodies have been injected with Jenova cells, and that is the connection between them. The reason why Sephiroth freed Cloud from his cell in the Shinra HQ. Why Sephiroth is not hostile towards Cloud. So I used to assume that Sephiroth was somehow using his own Jenova cells to manipulate those inside of Cloud to make him do these things, but I no longer believe this to be the case. Nowadays, I think it's just a matter of pure willpower. Sephiroth's will is so strong, and Cloud's is so weak, that he is able to simply override Cloud's will to make him do whatever he wants. We will discuss the reasons for Cloud's weakness in my video on his character, but for now all that matters is that Sephiroth seems to have a deep understanding of Cloud's psychological condition and is able to take advantage of its vulnerabilities. Later on, Cloud and the rest of his party follow Aerith to the City of the Ancients, where she went alone to do something to save the planet. When Cloud and Aerith finally reunite, Sephiroth tries to control him again. He tries to force Cloud to kill Aerith, but this time, with a little help from his friends, Cloud manages to resist. What follows is one of the most famous scenes in history. Out of nowhere, without any hint as to what's about to happen, Sephiroth leaps from the sky, blade in hand, and stabs Aerith in the back, impaling her on his sword, killing her instantly. She slumps to the ground, dead. I often think of Final Fantasy VII as being a story divided into 3 distinct parts. The first part is dominated by the Shinra Electric Power Company. Then, as we've already discussed, Sephiroth appears and the story suddenly transforms. It becomes this much grander fantasy adventure epic. But then Sephiroth murders Aerith and the story transforms again. Becomes a much more personal and intimate story about questions like, what really matters? What is true inner strength? Aerith's death is totally shocking and unexpected. Her character is so important to the story. Her status as the last descendant of the Ancients, her unique powers and perspective. These are things the villains might want to possess, but never to destroy. Shinra has been trying to capture Aerith for the entire game, but they would never kill her. She is too valuable, she is too special. And then, as if to demonstrate just how little respect he has for the value of life, Sephiroth casts her aside like it's nothing, like he's just taking out the trash. It's horrifying. It is deeply upsetting. But as unexpected as this is, Sephiroth is falling into a typical villainous pattern here. It's actually very common for villains to kill a beloved character. It is a common narrative tool with a clear purpose. This makes the villain hateable, despicable, detested. It shows the audience just how evil they truly are, how necessary their destruction is. It's a compelling motivation for both the characters and the audience to want to destroy that villain. After he kills Aerith, Sephiroth says, "Do not be concerned. Soon this girl too will become a part of the planet's flow of energy." He's speaking here of his belief that death isn't really death. Her soul is not lost. It will return to the life stream. And if Sephiroth's plans are successful, it will become a part of him as well. But Cloud interrupts his monologue. He says that the cycle of nature and Sephiroth's grand schemes don't matter. What matters was Aerith, not her soul, not her spirit energy, but her personality, her individuality. The things that made her unique, the things that made her different than anyone else, those are lost. The things that made Aerith are gone forever. She is gone forever. Sephiroth's belief that the death of an individual doesn't matter just because their energy is still around is total bullshit. It's his inability to recognize this that makes Sephiroth a truly despicable and evil villain. He simply does not understand the tremendous value of an individual life, nor the terrible rending pain that loss and grief produce. This is what makes Sephiroth inhuman. Not his Jenova cells, not the fact that he is the product of a science experiment, but his lack of emotion, his lack of grief, and his lack of care. Sephiroth describes the murder of Aerith as a mere diversion, a distraction from his greater plans, which is a disgustingly dismissive and careless way to describe the loss of a life. Of course, he did have a reason for killing Aerith. It wasn't just a random act of violence. That orb she drops is the white materia, the counterpart to the black materia that Sephiroth was seeking. Where the black materia wields magic of great destruction, its counterpart wields magic of great protection. She was casting a spell here which would protect the planet from anything that might cause it harm, which would of course ruin Sephiroth's insane plans. In some ways, what we're seeing in this scene is actually the continuation of an ancient battle between the Cetra and Jenova, but we'll discuss that more in a bit. From here, our heroes follow Sephiroth into the north, the site of a very old crater, where the planet was struck by a meteor long ago. The planet is still attempting to heal this wound. And for that reason, there is a great deal of magical energy gathered here. Magical energy Sephiroth intends to absorb in order to become powerful enough to summon the meteor. On the way there, we make a stop at the Icicle Inn, a secluded and snowy village in the mountains. This is one of the most important locations in the entire game, because this is where the history of Jenova is finally revealed. Alright, very quickly, let's sum up what we've learned about Jenova so far. Jenova was a creature whose body was discovered frozen in a 2,000-year-old ice stratum by Shinra researchers. At first, Shinra believed she was an ancient, a member of the Cetra, but Sephiroth later describes her as a calamity from the sky instead. In experiments using her cells, Shinra's researchers created Sephiroth, and so he refers to her as his mother. Her cells appear to be responsible for his tremendous powers. The player will have seen multiple versions of Jenova over the course of the game, in both cutscenes and in battles. She is shown to be a bizarre, alien-like creature who wields great magical power, but her nature and origins are still unclear. Now, in the Icicle Inn, the player can find an abandoned research lab which contains videotapes of interviews between Professor Gast, the famous Shinra scientist and predecessor to Hojo, and a woman named Ilfana, who is Aerith's mother and a Cetra who still remembers her people's history. In one of these interviews, titled The First Crisis of the Planet, she discusses Jenova. She says that the planet was once wounded by something that fell from the sky, landing here in the far north. Thousands of Cetra gathered and attempted to mitigate the injury, but the wound was very deep. Living conditions became difficult, and so the Cetra began to depart. And then something appeared at the Great Crater. A creature, a being, a life form whose like had never been seen before. This creature had fallen from the heavens astride a meteor, and when it struck the Earth's surface, it created a massive crater. so deep it still has not been healed. Cetra called this creature the Calamity from the Sky. It used illusions to deceive the Cetra, tricked them using the faces and memories of their dead loved ones. Using these illusions, it got close enough to infect them with a virus. Those infected by the virus went insane and turned into monsters. The creature traveled across the world, deceiving and then destroying every clan of Cetra it encountered. In the next video, Ilfana confirms that the creature Shinra excavated and named Jenova was the Calamity from the Sky. The few surviving Cetra managed to defeat and imprison Jenova deep in the ice, where she rested for thousands of years before being freed by the Shinra scientists, who had no understanding of the danger they had stumbled upon. That is everything we ever learn about Jenova in the original game, which is not very much. Unknowability is at the center of Jenova's character. It's not just a mystery that hasn't been solved. Many aspects of its character are simply unknowable, and that is a deliberate choice by the writers. Jenova is an example of cosmic horror, a genre of horror which I've discussed in detail on this channel before. Unknowability is a key element of cosmic horror, intended to simulate our inherent fear of the unknown. We don't know where Jenova came from. We don't know whether she was born naturally or manufactured artificially. We don't know if there is an entire race of Jenovas out there roaming the stars, traveling from planet to planet, wreaking destruction wherever they go, or if she is the only one of her kind. We don't know what her true purpose is. Why is she infecting Cetra with this virus? Could this be how her species reproduces? She infects other creatures with her DNA in order to transform them into versions of herself? Or maybe Jenova is not as intelligent as she seems. Maybe she's operating purely on instinct. Maybe Jenova herself is the virus, a virus which infects and destroys intelligent life wherever she encounters it. Or maybe Jenova was going to do the exact same thing that Sephiroth is doing. First, she wounded the planet with a meteor strike, and then, once the threat of the Cetra was removed, she was going to attempt to hijack the planet's life stream to become a god. We simply do not know the truth, and not knowing is the point. Sephiroth is the child of a calamity. He is the genetic spawn of a creature whose nature and origins we simply do not understand. He is a mutant, part human and part something else altogether. Moving on, our heroes journey across the ice fields and frozen mountaintops until they reach the northern crater. There they encounter the Black Cloaks again, who appear to be gathering here with the purpose of dying. They die of exhaustion on the trail and throw themselves off cliffs, groaning and moaning and muttering about Sephiroth. This is the reunion. Each of these cloaked figures was injected with Jenova cells by Hojo. They are called clones of Sephiroth, but that name is a bit deceptive. Usually we think of clones as being genetically identical copies, but that's not what these are. Instead, these are attempts by Hojo to reproduce the results of his Sephiroth experiment, using the exact same means to create a new creature with the same powers as Sephiroth. Which, of course, begs the question, why was Hojo trying to make a new Sephiroth? Well, we'll see the answer to that question soon enough. The clones have been bound to Sephiroth's will in the same way Cloud was earlier. Sephiroth has lured them here so that their genetic material, their Jenova cells, can be returned to Jenova herself, so she can be restored to her former power. Near the center of the crater, Cloud confronts Sephiroth. Sephiroth says his current body has reached the end of its usefulness, and then he transforms into another Jenova construct. What's being revealed here is that the Sephiroth we've been following all this time wasn't really Sephiroth at all. It was a piece of Jenova's body that had taken on his form. As Ilfana discussed earlier, Jenova has the ability to mimic the appearance of others. The entire purpose of this fake Sephiroth was to deliver all of the Jenova cells and the black materia to the northern crater. By following fake Sephiroth, by retrieving the black materia for him, Cloud and the rest have actually been doing exactly what Jenova and Sephiroth wanted them to do all along. This is another sort of classic villainous twist. The villain is so powerful, so intelligent, that she has already planned 10 steps ahead. Even when you think you're foiling the villain's plans, you're actually just furthering them. When Cloud approaches the center of the crater, he is shown a vision of Nibelheim, created by Sephiroth. In this vision, it is strongly suggested that Cloud is not who he thinks he is. He may not be Cloud at all. We'll discuss this in far more detail in my video on Cloud, but for now, what you need to understand is that Sephiroth is attempting to cause Cloud to have an identity crisis to break his will. This is really fascinating, because what Sephiroth is doing is wielding identity as a weapon, which I don't think I've ever seen a villain do before. I've seen villains wield physical weapons, physical strength, magical strength. I've seen them wield lies and manipulations, but never identity. It's not just that Sephiroth is trying to cause Cloud to doubt himself. All villains do that. Sephiroth is taking it a step further. He is trying to cause Cloud to doubt his innermost self, everything he knows about himself, which is even more fascinating because, of course, as we already saw, it was an identity crisis that broke Sephiroth's mind in the first place. Knowledge of self drove him insane, and now he's trying to do the same thing to his enemy. And it works. He breaks Cloud's will. Cloud doesn't know who he is anymore, and that leaves him in a weakened state. In this state, he is easily overpowered by Sephiroth's strength of will. Sephiroth dominates him, forces him to do whatever he wants. This is where Hojo actually reveals that Cloud is just another clone of Sephiroth, a failed attempt to reproduce that great warrior. Cloud is the same as the Black Cloaks, experiments injected with Jenova cells, summoned to the north by their master to reunite with the original. The real Sephiroth was here in the northern crater all along, his body being restored in the massive quantities of energy here. For the second time,
kind of boring.
Cloud hands over the black materia, and Sephiroth summons his meteor to wound the world. The villain has won. For the final act of the game, that meteor looms in the sky, a constant reminder of the planet's approaching doom. Soon, everyone will die. And for the final act of the game, Sephiroth remains locked away in the northern crater, no longer interacting with our main cast. He has assumed the traditional video game villain's role, the big bad final boss waiting for our heroes at the end of the final dungeon. But his story is not over yet. There are still 2 more revelations we need to discuss before we reach the final boss fight. The first takes place inside of Cloud's own memories. There's this whole elaborate sequence in which Cloud explores his memories and reconstructs his identity. In this sequence, Cloud finally remembers that 5 years ago, back in Nibelheim, when he and Sephiroth confronted each other in the Mako reactor at the top of Mount Nibel, Cloud, despite being far weaker than his opponent, managed to severely wound Sephiroth. Afterwards, Sephiroth disappeared in the north, but was presumed dead by Shinra. This is why Hojo was injecting people with Jenova cells in attempts to create a new Sephiroth, which then set the entire story of Final Fantasy VII into motion. Up to this point, Sephiroth has seemed completely unstoppable, invincible, like no one can beat him, and especially not Cloud, who has been broken at every encounter. But this memory demonstrates that Sephiroth is fallible. He has been defeated before, which means he can be defeated again. But something even more important happens in this sequence. Okay, so Cloud's mind was completely shattered by his identity crisis, just like Sephiroth's was back in Nibelheim. However, by accepting the full truth of his past and his identity, Cloud is healed. He regains control of himself. This suggests that it's possible that Sephiroth could have been healed too, if he had just learned and accepted the full truth of his past, which is related to the second revelation I want to discuss. This one takes place right before the battle with Hojo, who is doing everything he can to support Sephiroth's apocalyptic plans, even though it will mean his own death. The reason for this is that Hojo is Sephiroth's biological father, and like any good father, he wants to support his son. Or, like any good scientist, he just wants to see his experiment through to its conclusion. Hojo impregnated Lucretia, and then injected the fetus with Jenova cells. Therefore, Sephiroth is very literally Hojo's child. But why does this matter? Who cares who his biological father is? Well, as we've discussed, Sephiroth has constructed his identity on the belief that he's the child of Jenova and the creation of the genius Professor Gast. If he knew who his father really was, if he knew that he was not just created in a lab, but born of a woman, a human woman, that he is no more the child of Jenova than anyone else who was injected with Jenova cells, including both Cloud and Hojo himself, that would have forced Sephiroth to construct a different identity. Sephiroth is not a Cetra, and he is not an ancient. He's not a god. He is not an interstellar nightmare born of the void. He is not even really the child of Jenova. He is human, and his inability to incorporate his humanity into his identity is possibly the true cause of his madness. This is only a theory, of course, but thematically it fits the narrative. With complete and correct knowledge of self, Sephiroth may have never become a villain at all. And then again, maybe not. We'll never know. Anyway, in the end, our heroes return to the northern crater and confront Sephiroth one final time. Sephiroth no longer has the appearance of a human man. He has transformed into this magnificent winged being, with a divine halo hovering over his head, a visual design meant to indicate that he is indeed ascending to godhood. Before I end this video, I want to discuss two final questions. First, why doesn't Sephiroth speak in this final battle? He does not say a single word anywhere in this fight. Even as he dies, he does so silently. He has no final words, which is very unusual. Villains, especially ones who have as much character and personality as Sephiroth does, do not die silent. They usually mouth off. "You're nothing but a worm to me. You're a butthole's butthole. You'll never defeat me." And this is something I'm really curious about with the remake trilogy, because they're definitely not going to let him be silent in the final battle of the third remake game. That would defy current narrative conventions in a way that the Final Fantasy series is not interested in doing anymore. They're going to give him something to say, and I'm very curious to see what that's going to be. But let's imagine that this is an intentional choice by the writers. Well, the purpose of dialogue is usually to reveal something to the audience. Whether it's something about the character, about the plot, about the themes, dialogue should never be included just for the sake of having characters flap their gums. It needs to be adding something to the narrative. But at this point in the story, perhaps there's really nothing left to reveal about Sephiroth's character or the story's themes. Maybe the audience already knows everything there is to know here. Maybe there's just nothing left to say. The battle itself communicates enough on its own. The challenge of this final fight, the spectacle, the grandeur. The player will feel the tension. They will see the incredible scale of Sephiroth's attacks, especially this one, in which he summons a comet from outside the galaxy, which shatters Pluto, destroys Saturn's rings, punches a hole through Jupiter, slams into the sun, which then expands, destroying both Mercury and Venus too. This single attack just wrecked our entire solar system. Who cares what he has to say? My second and final question is, why are Sephiroth and Jenova fighting together? This final battle has at least two phases, usually three depending on certain circumstances, but that is not important here. The first battle is always against something called Jenova Synthesis, which I'm assuming is the reconstituted body of Jenova herself, restored to something close to her original power. Jenova presumably had her own plans when she first invaded this planet, but now she seems to have set those aside in order to support Sephiroth's plan instead. Why is she doing this? Is it simply that because Sephiroth contains her own genetic material, she views him as an extension of herself? Or does she think of him as a son in the same way he thinks of her as a mother? Or could it be that Sephiroth's willpower is so great that he has psychologically overpowered Jenova in the same way he overpowered Cloud and the other clones, that he has bent her to his will? Or could it be that she wants the same thing he wants, to wound the planet and hijack the life stream? Or maybe she simply wishes to destroy